everyone, welcome back. And in this video, I'll be giving you some information on iteration planning meeting, which is also known as IPM. So, we're all product owners and business analysts out there, and definitely there would be situations where the sprint is nearing, you have to kickstart the next sprint, and then you don't know what items you're going to move to the next sprint. You don't know what's a priority. You panic because the team is almost completing stories, and then you need to get things ready. You need to kickstart things, and then you're still not plan things out, and you're not ready. So this can become every BA's nightmare if you don't plan well for forthcoming sprints. So in this video, I'll be giving you some information of iteration planning meetings, and now it can help out to plan iterations further. So let's get into it. So as I said, to be a business analyst, you need to plan ahead because every iteration you need to bring about value. You need to keep stories ready. And it's not just picking up some random stories that you find in your backlog. The stories need to be well aligned with the stakeholders' expectations, with the value that your team is expected to deliver. And it also needs to keep in mind, you need to keep in mind the velocity and capacity and various other things when you plan out your iterations. So there are situations, as I said earlier, you don't know what items to pick up in next iteration. You have some, maybe you have some incomplete stories that, and those stories are really priority ones that need to be put into the next iteration. You don't have much time to plan. So what we can do is there is iteration planning meetings which helps developers and even product owners and business analysts to get aligned with what's coming up for the forthcoming sprint. So iteration planning meeting is one of the agile sessions. So like you have your the stand up sessions, you have retros. This is also another type of an agile session where the entire development team, including the scrum master, the stakeholders, then the business analysts, the product owners, along with the developers and the QA, they come together to plan the next iteration. So here is a good thing. Business analysts or product owners out there, you are not left alone to plan for it. Definitely you would be pairing with stakeholders. If you're a business analyst working with a product owner, you would be pairing with the product owner. With the technical leads, you would be pairing because everyone needs to come and give their perspectives. Only then you would be able to create a concrete plan. So don't worry, you would definitely be pairing with someone when you plan out this entire iteration. So when you plan out iterations, there are three main factors that you need to keep in mind and take into consideration when you're planning which story to pick up. One is you need to understand what are the prioritized items. So you just cannot randomly pick out items and user stories from your backlog and say, okay, let's just do this. No. You need to understand what are all the prioritized items. Maybe it can be a priority from the technical side. It can be a priority where the clients or the stakeholders say they need this feature out. So that can become a priority. But always keep in mind when you plan, you need to always give importance to priorities. So you need to understand what are the priorities or what are the immediate needs. The second one is the time. So every team, the duration of sprints can vary from organization to organization or team to team. So some teams can have a 2-week sprint, some can have a 3-week sprint. So it depends. So when you plan out for the next iteration, you should be able to keep in mind the time, the exact duration of a sprint, so you'll be able to plan accordingly. The next third most important factor is team velocity. So I've taken a video on velocity and velocity charts of a team. You can click on the link that I've given in the description box to understand more. But in a short note, velocity is nothing but the amount of story points that your team can pick up for an iteration. So why I say every sprint you need to track this velocity is because sometimes you might or the team might overestimate or they might overcommit user stories and they might fail. So the velocity would always keep averaging out. Also there can be some situations where team members might be less. It can be because of some organization activities. There can be some planned leaves that are scheduled, there can be some unplanned leaves. So you always need to look ahead and understand what would be the team velocity so that you can commit the right amount of user stories for the next iteration. So these are three factors that you need to keep in mind always. So here are some things to do before a iteration planning meeting. Okay, so the first one is the user stories need to be well defined and ready. So why I say this is because if you as a business or analyst or product owner is very unsure of what user story needs to be completed in the next iteration, the team is not going to get any overview or not going to have any understanding of what exactly needs to be delivered, what exact value is the team going to deliver. So you always need to be on top of things, and you need to first refine the user stories that you plan to pick up for the next iteration. So you need to be clear on your end as to what are all the intricacies and what are all the details of the user stories. So always make sure that it is well defined and ready. The next one is stories must be relatively sized. Now this needn't be a mandatory thing that you should do, but ultimately this happens over time when you become experienced and you're able to estimate on your end what could be the probable size of a story. It can always be revised when the team has the discussion, but if you feel you're able to just put out a size for the story, you can always size it down. The next one is story priority needs to be decided. So it's very important, as I said, you should be the one who defines the priority of the story, because you would be collaborating with the clients and the stakeholders and understanding their priority. So you should be able to prioritize and let the team know what is the value that you need to deliver for the next iteration. So these are some things that you need to do before going in for a iteration planning meeting. So now here are some outcomes. So you must be asking me, what is the outcomes of this iteration planning meeting? Yes, we know that we have to do these things and we know what factors to take into consideration. But here is some outcomes that you can achieve when you have an iteration planning meeting. So the first one is you will be able to present your plan, that is the set of next iteration items, to the team. So always it's not good that a team just remains blank and then when the iteration kick starts you need to start with explaining user stories. Teams and stakeholders need to be aware of what is coming up. Okay, that's the best practice. So when you plan for the iteration and when you present this plan to the team and the stakeholders and clients also would be well aligned with what's coming up next. The next one is the development team will be able to raise concerns. So now from the business analyst or the product owner point of view, you have put down some information about the user stories and you have put down some business rules and some logics and some acceptance criterias. But there can be certain technical feasibilities or some technical concerns that you might not be able to anticipate. So it needs to come from the technical and the development team. It's only here where you present these action items, these items that you want to take up for the next iteration, rather than letting the team just planning and then taking it to the team when the next iteration kickstarts and then coming to know that there are a lot of complexities and some loopholes and things are still very abstract. It's best when you have this iteration planning meeting, the team would also be able to raise their concerns regarding different aspects, maybe regards to complexity, technical feasibilities, etc. So in case there are some loopholes or there are some complexities or some technical feasibility issues and it cannot be taken up in the next iteration, you will always have time to get a backup user story and put it in the iteration. So the next point is you will be able to refine the user stories, the acceptance criteria, business rules, etc. Now you have, as a business analyst and product owner, yes, you have created super and well defined user stories, but there are situations where sometimes you might miss out on certain use cases, on certain scenarios. So when you have a discussion with the maybe the stakeholders or the clients or the development team, sometimes they would also give you some extra information, some scenarios that you might have missed. So with this you'll be able to refine the user stories all the more in terms of different aspects with regards to business rules, acceptance criteria, logics, etc. The next one is the development team will be able to define tasks for stories and estimate them. So once the development team knows what are the items and user stories that are coming up for the next iteration, they would be able to start cooking up their boilerplate, or they would be able to prepare for that iteration. Now, it's not only user stories that developers work on. The user stories would have tasks. It can be technical tasks that developers need to complete. So at that time, developers would start defining the different tasks that need to be completed in order to complete that user story. Also, in the iteration planning meeting, developers also would estimate the user story as to how many points it's going to take to complete that user story. The next one is you will be setting up an expectation for the client or the stakeholder. Now, there are various situations where, in the middle of an iteration, you might have a stakeholder or client coming up and saying, I need this feature in another 2 weeks. So, it's like adding some item that was not planned for the iteration. It's like adding that item into this iteration. Sometimes it can be small features and it's fine to take it up, but sometimes you should never, or it's hard to take up that feature. So having this iteration planning meeting along with the stakeholders and the clients, you would be setting up an expectation as to what are all the items that are being planned for the next iteration. They would be aware why you have taken up that item. They would be aware that it's a priority. They would be aware of how much of time each item is going to take. So it's okay to take up certain, urgent, requirements from the client and implement them in a given iteration, but it should not be a practice. It should not be made something that is always accepted, because you need to take time to do analysis. The team needs time to define tasks and etc. So always, by letting the stakeholders and clients know what is coming up for the next iteration, they would know that the team's plate is full, and they would also not add any ad hoc items into the iteration. The next one is the actual team, the development team, that is, the development team will be able to commit to the plan. The very interesting part of this iteration planning meeting is, rather than some other stakeholder or some just a product owner and business analyst committing and saying these are the items and these are the items that we'll be taking up for the next iteration and we will be completing these items, rather than the business analyst or the product owner or clients or any other internal stakeholders committing, the development team, the actual people who are going to develop and run the iteration, they are the ones who need to commit, because people on behalf of the development team committing will not make any sense. The actual team who's going to work, they need to commit, okay, these are the items, yes, it's fine to work with these items and we would be delivering this value. Having their acknowledgement and their commitment is the very key thing to this iteration planning meeting. And as I said earlier, the last one is the entire team is aware of what to expect. So rather than the development team, stakeholders, clients, the product owner, business analyst just, coming and sitting when the iteration is kicking off, and then only you come to know what are the items that this iteration is going to have, rather than that, last minute or a situation, you would already let the team and all the other stakeholders know, so that everyone will leave out the room aligned and they'll know, okay, these are the items, this is the value that we are going to deliver for the next iteration. So everyone knows what to expect and they are aware of what they can expect with the next iteration. So this was some information about iteration planning meetings. So if you have still not had any of these sessions in your team or project, I recommend you to have it. It will be very useful. It's a regular agile session, and as a business analyst or product owner, you can easily run these sessions. So I hope this was helpful and useful to you. If you like this video, please do give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.